Hello, virtual pilots. iFlyFlightSims here. Welcome back to the channel. Korea IL-2 series launched into early access last week, and like many of you, I couldn't wait to try it out. This game was worth the long wait, and I'm having more fun than I've had in a long time playing it. A few common questions surrounding VR that I've seen about this game since it launched are: what hardware is needed, what settings should be used, and how the overall VR experience is. I aim to answer those questions for you in this video. If you are a flight simmer with a VR headset and wondering how to get the best possible performance with it in Korea IL-2 series, then this video is just for you. I will show you what graphics settings I use on my setup and what settings I recommend using for the best possible experience in both VR and 2D. Stick around through the end of this video, as the results may surprise you. Just keep in mind that this game is still in early access, so the results can change as it gets closer to full release. Today we'll be taking a deep dive into optimizing VR performance as we go over the Nvidia app, the Pimax EVO app, and the in-game settings in Korea IL-2 series. Now before we get started, I just want to send out a thank you to Pimax for loaning me this Pimax Crystal Super QLED VR headset so I can make this video. This headset gives you a phenomenal 106 degrees field of view, and the QLED panels with a resolution of 3840 by 3840 per eye really makes the cockpit details pop out. This headset is an excellent way to immediately level up your VR experience in many simulation games. Now, as a heads up, there is a special promotion going on right now this summer. Just enter my code iFlyFlightSims at checkout to get 2% off your purchase. During the Pimax Summer Carnival event, if you buy a Pimax Crystal Light, Super QLED, or Super OLED, you'll get free shipping and a free set of DMAS earphones. Also, if you buy a Pimax Dream Air Lighthouse or Slam Edition now, you'll get free shipping plus the pre-order benefits, which include a free set of lens frames and a 50% off DMAS head strap exclusive voucher. You can get all of these benefits, plus you can take an extra 2% off with my code iFlyFlightSims. Yes, you heard that right. The 2% discount has been extended to include the Dream Air. Simply select the bundle on the checkout page and enter my code at the checkout to claim the discount, free shipping, and the freebies during this special event. If you want to save money on a Pimax headset, be sure to complete your purchase during the event, which ends on July 10th. Now, if you're watching this video after the promotion ends, you can still use my affiliate link and discount code in the video description and comments below. And as a disclaimer, I receive a small commission on those purchases. Alright, let's dive in. So currently, my setup includes an Nvidia RTX 5080 GPU, an i7-14700K processor, and 96GB of DDR5 RAM clocked in at 3200 MHz. You can find my complete setup information in the video description. Now let's discuss VR capturing methods. So for this guide, I captured all the in-game VR footage you're seeing by recording my desktop mirror. The reason I did this is that I wanted consistency between the 2D footage and VR footage for comparison, while being able to show the performance metrics using MSI Afterburner and Private Tuner Statistics Server. For the testing methodology, I simply use recorded in-game tracks so I could get a one-to-one comparison while adjusting the various settings. Now let's start with the 2D performance as our baseline for comparison. We'll begin with the settings in the Nvidia GeForce experience. You can add the game through the Add Program function. Just make sure that you select the IL-2 series EXE so you can configure the settings. Here we are in GeForce Experience. Make sure you have the latest driver installed, and then head over to the Program Settings tab. You can add IL-2 series.exe by clicking the three dots and selecting Add Program, browsing to the folder where the game's exe is contained, and then selecting IL-2 series.exe, clicking Open, and that will add the program here to your control panel. And here in GeForce Experience, there's a few settings that I'd recommend updating here for 2D. We're going to start with the DLS Override model presets. And in this pop-out window, select Custom. For frame generation, leave it on default, but set Preset M for Super Resolution. And the other setting that I would recommend updating here is the Super Resolution mode. So we're going to override that to the Quality setting. Low Latency mode, we want to leave that on. For max frame rate, I set this to 120 FPS for OBS Studio recordings, as well as fixed refresh. You can use G-Sync if you're just playing but not recording in OBS Studio, and vertical sync on. And now here are the settings that I'm using in-game. So we're in the Graphics Settings menu, and we're going to start by setting the general graphics quality. So I've chosen Ultra. You can also see VR Optimize there. We'll come back to that later. Followed by the screen resolution, so just select the maximum one that your monitor supports. For me, that's 1440p. Full screen, leave that on disabled so you can Alt-Tab. Followed by the upscaling method, so I'm using DLSS quality in this case. If you turn off upscaling, then that gives you more anti-aliasing options, including MSAA, which is more expensive, and DLAA, but I recommend using upscaling as it is hard to run this game without any type of upscaling. Right here is where you can toggle on the VR helmet-mounted device, and you can select either OpenVR or OpenXR. You will notice a warning over here on the right to stop using OpenXR Toolkit, as the tool is deprecated. It does not work in Korea IL-2 series. Moving on, we have our distant landscape detail. I set that to 4. Horizon draw distance, all the way out to 150 kilometers. Distant buildings enabled, pilot body visibility enabled, canopy reflections on high, shadows on ultra, clouds extreme, grass on ultra, mirrors to complex. We want to leave target FPS off, as this can cause our resolution to change. VSync enabled, sharpening disabled. I think DLSS works just fine. SSAO enabled, indirect lighting enabled, terrain roughness on high, landscape filter blurred, HDR enabled. Gamma correction, that is user preference. I'm leaving it on 1 for now. And use 4K textured enabled, and cities optimization favor FPS. And that covers our in-game graphics settings. Now, all of these settings on my setup results in a stable 120 FPS in the main menu, as you can see from this clip. Moving on to our single-player test, we can see that I'm getting between 85 and 92 FPS while on the runway here in the MiG-15, but once I get into the air, the frame rate stabilizes at about 120. Where we start to see slowdowns are above this massive B-29 formation, which causes dips as low as 65 to 66 FPS. Continuing on to our next test, which is the first multiplayer test. On the runway in this group of F-84 Thunderjets, we again have between 85 and 92 frames per second. The particle effects from the rocket boosters cause another dip in performance down to 75 FPS. Once we're airborne, the FPS climbs back up to above 100. In the next multiplayer test, we have a multi-aircraft ground attack in the Thunderjet. For the most part, the FPS stays above 120 until the particle effects kick in, causing drops into the 80s. The napalm effect really causes a huge performance dip up close into the high 60s. For the final multiplayer test, I'm alone here in an F-51D Mustang, conducting some bombing runs near a large city. The particle effects from the explosion and flying close to the city can cause FPS to dip into the high 90s. And so now that we have our performance baseline, let's get into VR performance. Now, I tested multiple combinations of settings, DLSS presets, and Pimax EVO settings with varying results. Using DLSS quality used up all of my available VRAM. DLSS Ultra Performance was better, but it wasn't a magic bullet. No matter how low I turned down the settings in-game, I just couldn't hit 72 FPS until I lowered the headset resolution as my last resort, in addition to turning down the settings. Now, lowering the headset resolution is the last thing you should try, as it significantly reduces the quality of what you see. So, here is how the settings compare without lowering headset resolution. We'll start with the main menu, where you can see that the best I could get was a whopping 34 FPS. In the single-player MiG-15 test, the best I could achieve was 45 frames per second on the runway, and 30 frames per second when attacking the B-29s. Taking off with the F-84s, the best I could get was between the 50s and the 60s. Conducting ground attack, in the best case, the FPS fluctuated in the 50s, with the worst case coming from that napalm effect again, causing a dip down into the 40s. In the final F-51 test, we can see that my average was somewhere in the 50s. Now, with the way that VR runs in this game, my RTX 5080 is an absolute potato. Maybe an RTX 5090 would perform better. You could also try frame interpolation with smart smoothing, but without that, here's what I had to do to reach 72 frames per second on my setup. And we're going to start with the settings in Nvidia GeForce Experience. Back in GeForce Experience, on the Program Setting tab, click the DLSS Override Model Presets option, and in the pop-up, select Custom and Preset M Super Resolution. Next, under the Super Resolution mode, select Ultra Performance, the lowest option, low latency, leave that on. For max frame rate, set to 75 frames per second. Monitor technology, fixed refresh, and vertical sync off, as that is controlled by the headset. Now that we're going into VR, we will need to configure our settings in the new Pimax EVO app, or Pimax Play. We're going to select Pimax OpenXR over here from the runtime. It gives better performance than SteamVR, and you can click this little refresh button to reload the runtime. Next, we're going to select this Quality and Performance tab and select 72 Hz for the refresh rate, followed by the Super Sampling Render Quality. I started out at 1, but I lowered this later on. Eye tracking, leave that on. We have the advanced quad view rendering controls. Now, these will apply in DCS. Right now, IL-2 Korea does not support quad views, unlike DCS, but this is where you can configure those, and Pimax EVO has a little nifty feature. As you can see over here on the right, there is a preview of what my VR headset view is going to look like based on the settings here. So this is a great way to kind of tweak those settings before launching into VR. So really love this preview that Pimax has added to the Pimax EVO app. And here you can see how it changes by adjusting those different sliders. Moving on, we have the GPU upscaling option. We can select FSR NIS. I'm going to choose none, but we are going to use the sharpness just a little bit. Close that Quality Performance tab. Here we can configure the optics. So this IPD calibration will be based on user preference, along with brightness, local dimming. You can adjust the personalization settings. You can toggle on and off that little frame rate overlay you see over on the right. In addition to motion compensation, you can turn that on here and enable the controller free mode. Now, another new feature of the Pimax EVO app is the ability to screen record in up to 4K resolution. So this is unprecedented. I was not able to do this in OBS Studio before, but now with Pimax EVO, I can record directly what the headset is seeing up to 4K 60 FPS. Here you can edit the save location as well as the shortcuts to start and stop recording using Pimax EVO. Towards the bottom, we have some additional VR mode settings, such as Standard Recline or 6 Degree of Freedom Recline, and finally the Developer Mode dropdown. You can find some additional options by clicking the little gear symbol down here on the bottom right. We have a little check for updates button to install updates. You can switch back to Pimax Play Classic by clicking that button, change your language, opt into beta channels, configure startup settings, minimize system tray, change the download location, etc. But we don't need to change anything here for the purposes of our setup. Now, one last thing to enable here under Pimax EVO is the performance setting under render quality. This lowers your super sampling to 50%. Don't forget to do that, as this is what is going to give you 72 FPS in Korea IL-2 series. One other quick note that I want to make here is that I strongly recommend using OpenXR for Pimax headsets instead of OpenVR through Steam, as my results with SteamVR were rather poor. I wound up hitting the VRAM cap very easily in the main menu, with my FPS fluctuating in the 20s. Essentially, it was unplayable for me when using OpenVR, so definitely I recommend using OpenXR as the VR runtime in both IL-2 as well as in Pimax EVO. Alright, now let's go over the settings that I'm using in-game. So here are the in-game settings that gave me the best possible performance. We're going to start with the general graphics quality, select VR optimized. Screen resolution doesn't matter, as that's governed by the headset. Full screen disabled for alt tabbing. Upscaling DLSS Performance Plus, VR HMD to OpenXR. Distant landscape detail to normal, horizon draw distance 100 kilometers, distance buildings disabled, pilot body visibility to disabled, canopy reflections, let's turn that off, shadows quality, set that to low, clouds quality, it works for me fine on high, but you could probably lower this to get a little bit more performance, grass quality to off, mirrors off, VSync, we'll leave that disabled, that's governed by the headset, sharpening, leave that enabled, SSAO enabled. The indirect lighting, definitely turn that off. That has a very high cost. Terrain roughness, I left it on high, but you could lower it for more performance. Landscape filter to sharp. HDR lighting, enabled. Gamma correction, again, that's going to be user preference. I'm leaving it on 1 for now. Turn off 4K textures to save yourself some VRAM. And cities optimization to favor FPS. Now let's see what that gets us. So here we can see that we now have 72 FPS in the main menu, but how do these settings perform in-game? Well, in the single player test, we can see that I'm getting about 72 frames per second while on the runway here in the MiG-15. Depending on where I look, it could dip down into the 60s. Attacking this B-29 formation still causes massive frame dips into the 40s, even with the lowered headset resolution. Now moving on to the first multiplayer test, we can hold FPS in the 70s until the particle effects engage, causing dips down into the 60s. Once we're airborne, the FPS climbs back up above 72. In the multi-aircraft ground attack test, we see some fluctuation in the 50s and 60s, with it occasionally climbing back up above 72. Finally, in the F-51D Mustang test, we have 72 frames per second until we start diving down towards the ground and the bomb blast particle effects engage. Otherwise, the frame rate stays in the 70s. Now let's tie all of this together. Here's the TLDR. Korea IL-2 series is currently still in early access and at least a month away from a full release. The development of this game is still ongoing. Given that it has not been fully launched, the experience now in both VR and 2D may not reflect the final product. This is a new game engine, leveraging the latest graphics technologies, and the required hardware has increased. To run this game in VR reliably, without lowering headset resolution, or using something like smart smoothing, asynchronous rendering, or frame interpolation, A GPU with significantly more VRAM is needed, such as a 4090 or a 5090. Not all setups and VR headsets are alike. Keep in mind that your performance may vary if your hardware is different from mine, so you may need to tweak these settings on your own and find out what works best for you. Headsets with a lower resolution won't be as demanding on your PC, but you also won't get the best visual clarity. As this game is updated, the performance could improve. I know that VR performance could be a deal breaker for many, but this game is still loads of fun in 2D. I was really hoping to use this game as a point of comparison for my upcoming review of the Pimax Dream Air that I received recently. However, given the current state of this game, I think it would be best to wait until it is fully released. Most likely, I will be publishing only 2D footage of this game until the VR performance improves. Nonetheless, I hope that you found this guide helpful, and if there is anything else that I should have mentioned, please feel free to let me know in the comments below. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you want to support the channel directly, you can become a member for early access and other perks. Don't forget to visit the Pimax store and use the code iFlyFlightSims at checkout for a discount on your new VR headset. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all again in the virtual skies.